Good morning. We are very fortunate today to be joined by one of the world's preeminent spiritual leaders, Acharya Shrivatsa Goswami of Vrindavan, India. Acharya Goswami comes from a family of eminent scholars and spiritual leaders at Sri Radharamana Mandir of Vrindavan. He is a leading figure in the Vaisnava tradition. He has participated in conferences on philosophy and culture and lectured at major universities around the world, including as a visiting scholar at Harvard and at Heidelberg. His book, Celebrating Krishna, was received with much acclaim. He is director of the Vraja Prakalpa, which is a multidisciplinary research project that has already published 8 volumes on various facets of Vraja culture and history. Among other commitments, the Goswamiji is devoted to interfaith relations worldwide and is presently working on the alliance of religion and conservation. He is connected with several important international peace and environmental movements. He was invited by the Archbishop of Canterbury and the President of the World Bank to represent Hinduism at an historic meeting of world religions at Lambeth Palace, London. In 2007, he was a resource person for religion to the meeting of over 40 heads of state in Vienna. In 2009, he was invited as a plenary speaker at the centenary celebrations of the American Academy of Religion. In 2011, the Pope invited Shrivatsa Goswami to the Vatican. In 2012, he was one of the main speakers at the Interreligious Harmony Week function at the United Nations General Assembly. The President of India has awarded Acharya Goswami the Sanjit Natak Akademi Lifetime Award for overall scholarship and service to Indian culture. We in America are living through a time of great turmoil, and it is a time that is especially pressing that we draw upon every world spiritual tradition to speak to our situation, to see if we can shed some light and move beyond the chaos and conflict that is attacking many of our major cities and move towards greater harmony and cooperation and goodwill among American people of every family, of every culture here in America. For this reason, I've invited Acharya Goswami to help us think through our situation, especially from the Hindu tradition. Please join me to welcome to this podcast, this program, Acharya Shrivatsa Goswami. Shrivatsa.
I'm here.
Lovely. Great to hear you. Thanks very much for making time to talk with me about these matters. We've had a little bit of time to speak prior to going live here, and then you graciously offered to reconvene and to discuss these concerns together. What I've labeled this talk for the moment is a Hindu perspective on contemporary American challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to give the date because we are so that listeners can contextualize the nature of this conversation. It's the 19th of June, 2020. And on this day, in the United States is a level of social unrest and even what some call insurgency at levels that I can't recall the last time we've seen a kind of a threat to the stability of daily life in the U.S. as severe as what we're experiencing now. And I was, as you know, like yourself, we try to understand the heart and sentiments of everybody involved, especially where there's an environment of conflict. It's very rare that there's somebody completely right and somebody completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a group active now that is involved in kind of violent attack against American society, against
Mm-hmm.
its property, and against its people.
Mm-hmm.
One jumps into the thought, well, this is evil, this is violence, this is destructive. They're attacking property, they're attacking human life,
Mm-hmm.
they're attacking innocent people. But obviously, those people would not define themselves as evil people. They're not waking up in the morning. I'm sure that they consider even these what look to me like horrible acts. They must define them in some way as legitimate. So, while trying to get into the mind of someone who would burn down a city or who would take the life of an innocent, hardworking person who's trying to support their family, what
Mm-hmm.
what what could possibly what could possibly support in their heart the notion that they're doing something good? And I came up with this, that basically when things are so dysfunctional or so harmful to human affairs that sometimes one needs to tear everything down. One needs to destroy what exists in order to allow a new light to shine. Now, personally, I don't agree with those people who are behaving violently now. But when I got this thought about the the conviction to destroy in order to put something new, I immediately thought of you, because there are figures in the Hindu pantheon who are venerated and indeed worshipped and beloved as gods, who have qualities of destruction in their role, in their divine role.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why I have you on with us now, is to ask your help in understanding how we can distinguish between any type of violent acts that in the Hindu pantheon we have beloved, benevolent figures who have violence in their necessary intervention in human affairs. How are we going to be able to not allow wanton criminal violence to be how do we distinguish between these two types of understanding? Was that clear enough,
Yes,
Acharya?
yes, yes.
Yes.
You are. You are.
So, I- I'd like to ask if I'm thinking, of course, of Lord Shiva
Mm-hmm.
and Goddess Kali.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these figures have a role of, say, destruction. That's fair to say? Yes. Would you? Am
It
I
appears so. It appears so. It
very good?
appears, but not.
Very
Mm.
good. If you would help us here, thank you.
Yeah. Actually, in the Hindu understanding, the process of creation is a cyclical order.
Yes.
So whatever begins have to come to a conclusion for renewal. So for that purpose, the divine agency has been divided into three parts. The
Yes.
creator,
Mm-hmm.
known as Brahma,
Mm.
the whatever has been created has to be looked after. So the sustainer of the creation is Vishnu,
Mm.
and then to wind up and give a new lease, a new beginning to the whole process, comes the act of Shiva,
Mm-hmm.
who puts an end to the manifest dimension of creation.
Yeah.
So he dissolves the process. But it is a very interesting dimension of his act of stopping the process of life, because what he does, as his name suggests, Shiva. Shiva means the welfare and the goodness of anything. So he exists for the good.
Mm-hmm.
And what he does, even during the creation process, when the creation is still alive and thriving, whatever is what you call the cause of suffering for humanity or any living being, those causes also are taken care of by Shiva. And all those bad elements, the suffering elements, are taken as poison, and Shiva drinks that poison.
Mm.
And that's why his throat is always with that poison. So
Interesting.
he drinks the poison, he sucks the evil out of the human creation, and for the welfare of humanity and nature and any living being. So that is a very fascinating side of Shiva, although it looks like that he is the god of death, but actually he is supporting life by drinking the poison of death, and then he is giving death in the form as when you see the seed. What is a seed? Is seed is the death of the tree, or is seed the birth of the tree? It functions both ways. The culmination of the life of a tree is a seed. But unless that seed dies, it cannot give birth to the new sapling.
Mm.
So Shiva actually, very dialectically and very interestingly, he death as the beginning of a new life.
Very good. Very good.
But for
Yes.
the opposition of these two forces, and both the forces taking supposedly the understanding that they are taking the right path, they're making good use of violence or whatnot, and the opposite side of them. This actually is understood in the Hindu tradition in a slightly different way, but it might be helpful for my American brothers and sisters to understand their situation. Here, all the divine intervention is only for one simple and single reason, and that reason is to sustain dharma. Dharma literally means the values are helpful in sustaining or crucial for sustaining life. Whether it's
Acharya, you were just
Yeah.
you were just broken up. You said the values and if you could continue, there was a brief interruption in the recording.
Okay. Dharma in the
Yes.
Hindu understanding is known as the values and systems which sustain life of any kind. And we as humans are more concerned with the human life, basically. So it is dharma, the fundamental essential values which have to be sustained in themselves. We have to support and protect those values and to bring humanity on the path of the dharma. The divine intervention takes place in human history. And for that reason, what it does, that whatever is opposite of dharma, called adharma, non-dharma, then the divine intervention many a times becomes violent but never using that violence or anger for harming the righteous or the dharmic life, but always trying to remove whatever is opposite of the values. Like truth is the fundamental dharma. Non-violence is the fundamental dharma. Compassion is dharma. Truthful sexual life is dharma. So whatever is opposite of that, even if they have to use violent means for that, they are not hesitating, but very, very carefully, they are never using violence or anger for supporting the unrighteous. And the biggest example in human history is the great war of Mahabharata, where the two parties are fighting with each other and a tremendous bloodbath happens. And after that great war, very few humans are surviving. So the victorious prince asks the god, Krishna, that why was there a need of such a huge, violent battle and such a huge bloodbath? And the typical answer Krishna gives, typical to Krishna, he says, the humanity cannot survive with number game. Humanity will survive with their fundamental values. And in this case, it was justice. If justice survived, and very few human beings survive, then the human system will carry on. But if the justice is removed from the human affair, then the humanity cannot move further. So that kind of very clear understanding that for doing away with the forces which are fundamentally opposed to the sustaining values of humanity, that is the scene. And if we understand the American scene today, and as a Hindu, I can understand it much deeper, because Hinduism as a religion is federal in nature as the American society is. The American society, like Hinduism, is a celebration of variety. And in that variety, we have to have an understanding of the other, which should not be taken as opposite of us, but rather complementing us, enriching us. And that is the Hindu way of understanding of life, where the male and the female factors make the human life happy and blissful. The male and the female looks like opposite of each other, but they are not. They are complementary. And when they come together and dance together, their dalliance gives the biggest accomplishment to the human nature. So in that way, if we come out of that either or binary way of thinking, then we can celebrate the variety. We can celebrate the other as a partner of our dance in life.
Excellent. This is very helpful, Shrivatsa Acharya ji. So I just want to kind of what's the word I want? Re-express what I think I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
In America is conceived in its ideal as a celebration of its diversity, in which every different type of person makes up in our fullness makes up the
Yeah.
beauty of our land.
Yeah.
So otherness per se is as the origin of delight, not the origin of struggle or difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all as human beings are
Yeah.
familiar with the cycles of renewal.
Mm-hmm.
We all live through autumns, like autumn.
Yeah.
Autumn, the leaves turn their magnificent color, and they seem to die. In fact, they do. I think they do die, but they're very stay as they decay and as they end and as they dissolve and as they finish, serve the health and strength of that which comes anew in the spring.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
and so there is a dimension that would seem violent or seem to allow death in it, but for those people who are caught up in the flames of passion, of a certain righteousness, even a sense of a drive for justice, there needs to be some, especially at such a moment, there needs to be some extremely bright guidelines. Like if ever we need clear delineation, once our passions are inflamed, once we seek justice, once we believe that what we're doing is right, all the way to the point where we're tempted to the space of destruction and violence, at that very point, there needs most desperately clear guidelines about what is going to govern our behavior and our actions amongst one another.
Right.
And so in the Hindu pantheon, we have gods and goddesses whose very mission is that seeming violence or that seeming death that is the protector of life, the giver of life, the celebration of justice. But certainly a divine, a god, could never be just whimsical, could never be errant, could never kill accidentally or whimsically, could never find joy in destruction. So the gods are the ones who can help us see what governs when renewal and justice need to be pursued. And what you have pointed out is the protection of the gods, in fact, the very gods themselves, their own protection, since they have the burden of having violence and destruction in their responsibility for the good of humankind. Their protection would be ours, would be identical to our protection when we are aflame to seeking justice.
Yeah.
And that protection is what you called that every act, whether it's for life-giving, whether it's for cyclical destruction and new life, whatever it is, sustenance, creation, destruction, no matter what the act is, it is never outside of a commitment to the protection of Dharma.
Right.
That's the whole point, isn't it, Acharya?
Right. Right.
Dharma. And
Yes.
when we spoke earlier, because like somebody can like Google or flip through a dictionary, and when they finally get the right spelling, say, "Oh, Dharma, truth," and but it's far more profound than simply a translated term like Dharma. Because you spoke of when I spoke to you, you spoke of an open-ended list of human virtue.
Correct.
Yeah, and if you don't, and you did that just now, but if you don't mind, because why I'm speaking with you is because I want a voice out into every American, including those who are aflame with the need for justice for unoppressed people, unjustly oppressed, and we have to be guided in the temptation toward violence, like we see in our streets today, and so if the rule is, it's never not a part of seeking bliss, welfare, human betterment, goodness, and the guidelines, the rails, the protection from when our passions and when our righteousness arise
Yeah.
is dharma. So
Right.
if I can hear from you what these guidelines, you've mentioned them, and I want them again, because this
Yeah.
is what we need. Yeah.
It is very simple. Uh, any principle for human behavior, and the list always begins with truth.
Yes.
Even one single day, life of one single day, is not tenable if we are just living by behaving opposite of truth, just speaking lies and lies and lies and lies.
Yes.
We cannot even survive one day, practically speaking.
Yes.
So truth, say compassion, say non-violence, say not stealing, contentment, and you go on. And on the social level, the dharma also includes equitable distribution of natural and food resources,
Mm.
respect for the other. It is very clearly said in the list of dharma, respect for the other,
Mm.
no less than yourself, no less than yourself.
Mm.
Atmavat. And so, why I say it is an open-ended list, you take any human virtue,
Mm.
any human goodness, and if you see that it is universally applicable, that is dharma. That is dharma.
Mm.
And it is across all platforms. It's like Unix system. It will work on iOS, it will work on Windows, it will work on anything.
Mm.
Any gender. Truth will operate in any continent, any time, any century, any millennium, any political system, anything.
Yes.
It is human. That's why it's called Manava Dharma, human
Mm.
dharma, human virtue, human sustenance.
Mm.
So all these together, and becomes
Mm.
then the guideline for human behavior as an individual and also as a member of a society.
Yes.
They have a
Clean-
fundamental role to play.
cleanliness, purity,
Cleanliness,
fidelity,
yes,
honesty.
honesty. You can go
Mm.
on, and that's why I call it an open-ended list of human
Mm.
virtues.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would say humbly,
Mm-hmm.
battle with all your heart for justice and for righteousness, but never dare to be even for a moment outside of dharma,
Yeah.
of human virtue, the human virtue that's always true in all places, at all times, for all people.
I give you an example, a modern example, a contemporary example, almost contemporary example. India was in its height of struggle for freedom with the British Empire.
Yes.
And the British were using a lot of violence to quench that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But the First World War came and the Second World War came. In both the occasions, the champion of non-violence, Mahatma Gandhi, he called upon his countrymen to stop and postpone the struggle for freedom from the British Empire, and he asked the young men of the country to go and fight with the British in Europe and Africa and Middle East.
Mm.
And hundreds of thousands of Indians sacrificed their life.
Mm.
In the Second World War, the biggest human casualty numerically is of Indian soldiers.
Incredible.
Indian soldiers.
Incredible.
And when the war was over, Gandhi came back on nonviolence. So that also exemplifies that how the champion of nonviolence, there's nobody in the modern history who has committed his life and sacrificed his life for nonviolence.
Yes.
And from Bishop Tutu to Mandela to Martin Luther to you name it, worldwide, this civil disobedient movements and nonviolent movements,
Right.
Gandhi is
Martin
the
Luther
first.
King.
Martin Luther
Right.
King Jr.
Yeah.
All,
Yes.
but this man, what is he doing? He is using violence. He is allowing violence. He is allowing participate in the war for the sake of preservation of justice and truth and fight against exploitation from wherever it was coming.
Yes. So very good, Shrivatsa ji, Acharya ji. I'm grateful for this. We want peace. We want our neighbors to love each other. As we all know, people on the street honestly love each other easily.
They do. They do.
It's when political and ideological passions get a grip on people that they cease to see one another humanly.
Right.
And the great traditions, the great spiritual traditions, are needed more than ever whenever these breakdowns happen. And so,
if I can add one sentence, that
yeah,
this movement should be with one slogan, that human life matters.
yes,
Human life matters, and which includes all shades, all colors, everything.
that's the simple. That's part of Dharma. It's
Yeah.
always true everywhere.
Right.
It's never not true.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Acharya ji, this has been a great blessing for me. I know that I kept you up late, and
Yes.
but
It's always pleasure to talk to you. It stimulates something.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do everything we can to get this word out, and of course we'll always stay in touch. We pray for a lot of blessing over there where you are at home.
Oh yeah.
And we'll be back in conversation again soon.
Correct.
Thank you, Acharya ji.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.